we're going to be discussing Matt Rhule's tough decisions. This last month of the season is going to be one hell of an evaluation process for every single coach at that program, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So Matt Rhule's tough decisions. We're going to chat some recruiting because Matt Rhule's out recruiting right now. That's what he's doing. All right, bye weeks are loaded with recruiting, especially for head coaches. So I don't talk a whole lot of recruiting, all right? But I thought I might do that today. Also, Tony White's future. So much has been focused on the offensive side of the ball. So much has been focused on the play calling, screens, no screens. You know we ran 12 screens versus Ohio State. You know how many we ran versus UCLA, Jake?
No.
0.
Yeah, it didn't seem like too many. None?
0. I have thoughts on that. I'm just going to let that set out in the universe. How do you go from 12 to 0? All right. And so I think in this process, like, do people even know the defensive analysts? Do you find folks that are listening, whether you're driving, whether you're on the tube of you, whether you're on a podcast platform, whether you're following on TV. By the way, if you can see me and you think your job sucks, check out my shirt. It could always be worse. The fact of the matter is, most people probably can't even tell me the defensive analysts we brought in because so much focus has been put on Dana Holgorsen, and rightfully so. So we're going to chat about that. And I don't think they brought in a guy to move Tony White out. That's not why I think they brought him in. There's still a chance Tony White is going to be a head coach one day. There's still a chance. I know. It's like if we don't talk about it, it won't happen, right? Why? Why, Adam? Are you the one guy under God's hot sun that will talk about this? Why? Because it's the real world, and whether we talk about it or not, it's still a possibility. So I can't help but wonder if there is a chance, and let me be clear, I hope we score 30-plus points a game. I hope we go 3-0. I hope our defense blanks everybody and scores 42 defensive touchdowns the next 3 weeks, and everybody can stay. I am rooting for success for the people that are here. Ultimately, it'd be better. Just figure things out. Things go well. Everybody stays. Everybody would be happy. Life would be so much easier. Does that seem likely, Jake?
No.
Are the odds in that favor?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I try to live in the real world. All right? I do my best, you know. I wasn't big into superheroes growing up. I preferred Peter Pan because I never wanted to grow up, and that's 100% true, by the way. All right? I was never big into superheroes. I also liked WWE wrestlers. Why? Because you could actually go meet them. All right? Nothing but love to superheroes. Just not my thing. My point is simply this. The odds are there's going to be major changes in about a month. And if Tony White's going to be head coach one day, if he's not here next year, which I will fight, scratch, and claw, I don't know how much difference it'll make, but do everything I can to keep him here. Essentially, I'm just going to yell and scream that they need to pay him more. That's what I'm going to do with not my money. But if he's not here, I can't help but wonder if they may be brought in as a contingency plan, our potential next defensive coordinator. A guy, by the way, who has been Matt Rhule's defensive coordinator 3 times before. Temple, Baylor, Carolina Panthers. All right. So let's start with some of Rhule's tough decisions. I think not making a move at the offensive coordinator position as soon as most folks, including myself, would have liked, specifically play calling. I think that's bothered some folks, including myself. I think it's like, all right, can he make the tough decisions? Is he too close to these coaches? Are they too good of friends? All fair. Bringing in Dana Holgorsen tells me that he's got a contingency plan, if not already a plan set in motion on offense. He definitely has a contingency plan on defense because all of us want Tony back. All right. Now, for those who are like, oh, the defense hasn't played as good as last year, you're not wrong. Last year, they were 11th in the country in defense. This year, they're 14th. They're the only defense in the country that's top 10 in the sacks and top 15 in turnovers. So, yes, would they like to have the second half of Illinois back? Yes. The first 2.5 quarters of UCLA back? Yes. By the way, they shut them down the last quarter and a half. All right. And would they like to have the entire Indiana game back? Yes, everybody involved in Nebraska football would like to have that entire game back. But of the 36 quarters we played, they've actually played really, really good football for 28. And no, you want to bat higher than that. Okay. But the year before Tony White got here, the defense was 100th in the country. Exactly. So just keep that in mind. So for me, in a perfect world, we keep Tony White. Okay. If that doesn't happen, who is the probable defensive coordinator? The way it would seem, the contingency plan that seems to be put in place is Phil Snow. Now, this is an individual who's coached for a very long time. All right. This is an individual who has been his defensive coordinator, Rhule's defensive coordinator at Temple, 2013 to 2016. So there's 4 years. Also a safeties coach. All right. He was at Baylor, where he was his defensive coordinator for the next 2 seasons. And then he was his defensive coordinator for 3 years at the Carolina Panthers. So we are talking nearly a decade of rapport between Matt Rhule and Phil Snow, if necessary. It makes sense that if you're not completely sure what's going to go on with Coach White, because he's going to have opportunities, this seems like the logical contingency plan. And honestly, people aren't as educated, including myself. I'm learning more about him. All right. Troy Dannon, in a recent interview, called him a, and I quote, legend, end quote. Now, those were his words. Obviously, he's going to be optimistic, but I don't think it's a bad contingency plan at all. But you look at the offense, there's got to be either a drastic improvement, which is probably not realistic over the next month, or there needs to be changes, one or the other. So for me, if you look at the possibility of Dana Holgorsen being the offensive coordinator, obviously that is something that could help Dylan Rhule drastically. The passing game has struggled as the season has gone along. We don't have many guys open. When they have been open recently, they've been missed. I would argue this, what I mentioned yesterday on the show, which is the simplification of things. All right, sometimes more is just more. Sometimes more is too much, and sometimes less becomes more because you think less, play faster. And then maybe our 2-minute offense doesn't take 4 minutes to score from our own 46, and maybe it doesn't take 10 plays to score inside the opponent's 10-yard line. And thank God UCLA gave us 3 personal foul penalties, which led to 3 touchdowns. All of our touchdowns, by the way. So for me, Matt Rhule has some tough decisions. I think he's got some things in place. There are some question marks in his ability to maybe make tough decisions. I can't help but wonder if he's just waiting till the end of the year, because his philosophy is I don't do things during the season. He's made it very clear. He is going to stick to that. Now, it's more than just the coordinators. You've got to look at the position coaches. You've got to look at the offensive position coaches. I detailed yesterday the amount of quarterback coaching experience that is on this team, offensive coordinator experience that is on this team. Did you have any idea the numbers were that high until I put them out there yesterday, Jake?
No, I didn't add them up that much.
Like 38 years of offensive coordinator experience. Now the Holgersons here, between Thomas, Holgorsen, Satterfield, and Rhule. I think people forget Rhule was a quarterback's coach at one point, offensive coordinator at one point, also an offensive line coach, defensive line coach. I like the eclectic versatility that Rhule has as a coach. It helps a head coach. But as far as specifically quarterbacks, you want someone who's obviously really good at quarterbacks. 35 years. As far as a quarterback's coach, combined experience between these 4 men, 38 between the 4 men as offensive coordinators. And Holgorsen has only coached quarterbacks, wide receivers when he's done position-specific coaching. That's all he's ever coached. Probably a main reason he's really good at passing offenses. So for me, there's tough decisions that need to be made. Coordinator-wise, there's tough decisions that need to be made when you're talking about the assistant coaches as well. It just is what it is. It's part of the job. You know, I think I mentioned this on a previous show. Nobody feels bad for the plumber if he gets let go because he can't fix the pipes. And I'm not trying to be down here. I'm just trying to be honest and realistic. Come next week, all of a sudden, we're going to look at USC. And we're going to look at a team that's 4-5. And we're going to look at the team that they're talking about don't have identity. And we're talking about a head coach that's under an insane amount of scrutiny out there in USC. And we're talking about a team that all 5 of their losses have been by 1 score. And they led in the 4th quarter of each and every one of those games. So there's not a lack of similarities between USC and Nebraska at this point. I am aware that USC is an 8.5-point favorite as it opened up. But they're starting a new quarterback. They benched their starter. Like, They're a favorite for a reason. I've also watched that team lose to Minnesota. I've also watched that team lose to Maryland. Decent teams, nothing special. I don't think they have anything that Nebraska doesn't. So coming off a bye week for them, coming off a bye week for us, I hope we handle the bye week a lot better. One of those two teams is going to get some momentum going forward. I'll talk about that more next week. So I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but my thought, as I was thinking yesterday, man, nobody's talking about what if Tony's not the DC as much as we want him to be. I think Matt's got a contingency plan. All right. Holgerson, I know folks want Nebraska to run the ball. I want Nebraska to run the ball. Our last 4 games, ladies and gentlemen, we've averaged 2.8 yards per carry. I mean, good God. So for me, I want an offense that works. I just do. I just want an offense that works. He has proven he can do that. So there are men here who are trying to win games and trying to save their jobs for University of Nebraska. So I'm going to throw one thing out there, and I'm just going to let it lie and then move on. Because out of respect for the men who are still here doing their jobs, I'm just going to throw it out there and then move on. Jake, next year, the possibility, if everything works out perfectly, and hopefully we win the more games the rest of the year, but just as far as off-season moves, what would you think of this? And then we'll move on. Potential offensive coordinator, Dana Holgerson. Potential defensive coordinator, just keep Tony White. Potential special teams coach, Bill Bush.
Oh, there you go.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think you'd have, instead of just paying top money for your coordinators, I think you'd have 2 of the top 10 coordinators in the nation. And then obviously we'd have to rally and see what we can do with early break.
Ooh. Well, maybe DP wouldn't like the idea I just threw out there.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. As far as Nebraska winning games, that legit gets me excited. Like it really does. Now, there's men here trying to win football games and retain their jobs, so we will move on. But Matt Rhule's got some tough decisions. I am as anxiously awaiting what's going to happen with our coaching staff, and hopefully there's a lot of wins left in this season. We're going to be dogs, probably all 3 games. All right, are we currently underdogs in all 3 games? Do you have you don't even have to look it up, Jake. We're going to be underdogs in all 3 games. So the odds are against us a little bit. Husker fans, at this point, I would take getting bowl eligible. Just winning 1 game. If I had my preference, I'd love to beat Iowa again. But I'd also love to beat Wisconsin, and I'd also love to beat them Southern California boys. So getting bowl eligible, which is just winning 1 more game. Again, we're going to be an underdog in all 3 games, probably 95% chance, and making the appropriate offseason moves. That's all I'm looking for at this point. If that happened, get bowl eligible, make the appropriate offseason moves, I would consider that success for now. What are your thoughts on that, my man, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because a lot of people, and you can still hear it, aren't, their goal is not 6 wins, right? I mean, your goal is to win 7 or 8, and with 8 still out there, I don't think we should be talking down it too much. But at the same time, I get it. You don't want to do more than 500, but you got to start somewhere. And some programs, see Indiana, they can jump out of nowhere and get there. But I mean, it's just been a long bowl drought. I'll take 6 wins. I'll take a bowl game. Coming in, go and then building, off of that in the future.
To be clear, this goes without saying, I want us to win all 3 games, mostly just because then I would be right in my preseason record prediction of 8-4. And that's all that really matters, is that I'm right. And if I'm not right, it's I'm going to blame the refs. I'm going to blame Jake. It can't be my fault if I'm not right with my preseason record prediction. I'm going to blame 12-0 screen passes. All right, maybe that's too true to be funny. If you say something too true, it becomes unfunny. My point is, I'd love to go 8-4 for a bunch of obvious, doesn't need to be said reasons. But my point is simply this: the bare minimum. Everyone growing up had a bare minimum grade that they knew wouldn't get them in trouble with their parents. Okay, and then everyone wants the A+, of course. But there was that bare minimum grade. All right, the bare minimum is what I just outlined for me.